Jack lived with his mother. He loved her very much. They'd had many adventures together. But now she was a bit old, a bit tired. And one day she said to Jack, "Jack, I'm expecting a visitor this afternoon. Probably best if you go out for a walk." And so Jack, not sure about this, but kissed his mum and said, "I'll be back soon." And he could see his mum laying out the teacups for 2 people. But as Jack walked down the road, he saw someone coming towards him. And in that moment, he knew that this was death. And he knew death was coming for his mother. "No, I don't want that. I love my mum. I don't want her to die. I don't want her to go from me." And he panicked and he looked around and he thought, what can I do? How can I stop death from taking my mother? And on the ground in front of him, he could see a little nut and there was a little hole in it. So he bent down and picked it up. And as Death came by, he said, "Hold up, Death!" And Death stopped and looked at him. "Oh, you think you're so fine, Death, aren't you? You think you can just take anybody you like. Well, I don't think you're so good. I don't think you're so powerful. I don't think you're powerful at all. And in fact, I don't think you are clever enough to even get inside this tiny little nut." And Death just looked at him and then looked at the nut. And whoosh, Death had gone into the nut. And then Jack got a little stone and wedged it over that hole. "I've got him. I've trapped him. I've trapped Death. Nobody has to die. My mum doesn't have to die." Oh. And he very carefully put that nut in the edge of a tree. And he went back to see his mum. And there was his mother. "Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry. I'm feeling very tired. My visitor didn't come. Perhaps you can go and get something to eat. Get some bacon, some eggs and some carrots." And Jack looked at her, and she looked as though she was in great pain. "Please, Jack." So he went down the road, down to the farmer, and came to the farmer and said, "Can I have some bacon, please?" "Ah!" said the farmer, "I'd love to give you some bacon, but every time I try to slaughter my pigs, woof, they come back alive. It's as though they can't die." Oh. So Jack then went to the farmer's wife. "Could I have some eggs, please?" "Well, Jack, you're welcome to have some eggs, but all that happens as soon as you crack open an egg, there's a little chick running around. Huh? It's as though everything's having to live." And Jack thought this was very strange. And on his way home, he saw the fields where the carrots were. So he just climbed over and tried to pull up the carrots out of the ground. But he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, and the carrots would just not come. So he got back to his mother, and he said, "Mum, I'm sorry." And he told her everything that happened. And she said, "That's very strange. It's almost as though Death has taken the day off." And of course, as soon as she said that, Jack's face went, "Jack, do you know anything about this?" And Jack stood there and he sighed and he said, "I'm sorry, Mum. I knew Death was coming for you and I didn't want to lose you. and she told him everything, what he had done. Oh, Jack, Jack, Jack. And she held him in her arms and she patted his back and she said, oh my dear boy, I am so sorry. Of all the things that we have done in this life, I have prepared you least for this. Because death comes for us all. Death has to come. There has to be life so that new things can be born. There has to be death so that people can be fed and animals can be fed, and each in their turn, their death contributes to new life. Jack, we've had a very good time together, but now it's time for you to have your life, have your family. Just remember the stories about me. Now, Jack, you know what you need to do. I will sit here. I will wait for my visitor. Please. And so Jack gave his mother a hug, kissed her on his forehead, and then turned and went out of the house, down the road, down to that tree. And he took that stone out, whoosh! And there was death standing in front of him. I'm sorry, said Jack. I didn't understand. And death just looked at him, nodded his head. And death went on his way. And when Jack came back into the house, there was his mother sitting in her armchair. And she looked peaceful and quiet, and she wasn't in pain anymore. And death had taken her. And there was a funeral, and friends came, and neighbours came, and there was a party, and they each told a story about his mother. And there are some things he'd never heard before, and some things were good old stories that people told time and time again. And he was able to tell those stories about his mother. So many memories, so many stories. He'd never forget them. He'd never forget her. And then he opened the door on a new day and stepped out into a new world and a new life. And that is the story of death and the nun.